Hello everyone, today I have a very special tutorial for you. So if you've been following my tutorials, so far we would have learned how to use the OpenAI API to generate text and to begin having a conversation with the GPT models that OpenAI have available. If you haven't seen those tutorials, I would recommend that you watch them and then come back to this video. But if you're already up to speed, I have something very special for you today. We're going to be learning about how to get AI to use functions. That is basically giving AI the ability to use your own custom code. So once you know how to do this, the possibilities are almost limitless. Once you understand this concept that I'm going to teach you today, you're going to be able to build AI-powered scripts which can execute tasks on your behalf. And with this knowledge, you'll be able to build really powerful applications and create loads of value, possibly for your own clients. And the good news is, I'm going to make this so simple for you to understand, and I've got a bunch of tools and templates for you to use completely free. So just stick around to the end of the video to find out how to get your hands on those. So let's get into it. So AI is more than a chatbot. Most people think that AI is just a chatbot or text generator. And the OpenAI API is already powerful for generating text and ideas. But the real breakthrough happens with functions and tools. So function calling allows AI to interact with external systems. The AI can request your Python code to execute actions. So this transforms AI just from a passive text generation tool into a system that's able to take actions on your behalf. So this is what we call agency. We as humans have agency. Agency is basically the ability to affect change on the outside world. And by giving AI the ability to use our functions, we give AI agency. So AI can now retrieve data, execute code, which will automate your workflows. And this is really powerful because the AI model becomes this own system that's able to reason and to apply logic, and then it's able to use the tools that you give it in order to intelligently complete tasks. So once you understand how to enable AI to use your functions, the possibilities are honestly nearly limitless. I mean, I've only got 4 here, but understand, if you can code a function, if you can write a piece of code that does something really useful, you can now give AI the ability to use that on your behalf. And in addition to that, you can give AI extra data which wouldn't otherwise be within its data set. For example, you can connect it up now to your own databases. Perhaps you have a customer database, and then AI can do really powerful stuff like following up on people who perhaps visited your dropshipping store but didn't make a purchase. Perhaps it can automate your email marketing and follow up with people intelligently and give personalized responses. I personally use AI for content creation and AI assisted video editing. So this video you're watching now has been edited by AI, even though I filmed it myself as a human. And you can also use it in financial markets. I mean, that's just one example. You can use it for hundreds of other examples, thousands of other examples. And honestly, you can connect AI up to other API tools and services. And I'm telling you, there's an API service for nearly anything you can imagine, from weather systems, news updates, insider trading, cooking recipes, literally anything you can think. There's an API for it, and now you can give AI the ability to interact with those tools. Why does this matter? So once you understand this is a foundational piece of knowledge for building your own agentic systems. And then you can build real products and automations that people would be willing to pay for, but also tools that would just benefit you. For example, I've built a number of tools now to assist me in my personal life, and I feel like I must be the most productive person on the planet at this point because it's enabled me to leverage my time and basically reduce friction on tasks that used to be really mundane and boring for me, but now AI just implements it on my behalf. So at the end of this video, I'm hoping that you'll have a big mindset shift. If you've only been using AI up until now to just answer your questions, I hope by the end of this video you stop thinking, what can AI say, how can it answer my questions, and thinking more along the lines of what can AI do for me? How can I get it to do something useful and valuable for me? So in today's tutorial, we're going to be going over this code. At the end of the tutorial, I'm going to give you this script as a template for you to use in your own projects and to get experimenting and using this incredible feature that the API has to offer. So I'll give you a quick demonstration. So here is a conversational script with the OpenAI model. And what I've done, I've enabled the OpenAI GPT 5.5 to have access to this API, AlphaVantage. Now, AlphaVantage is an API service that provides up-to-date information on the stock market. So I'm using the free API in this tutorial, but you can pay to have access to more features and make more calls. But this is a really powerful tool that an agent could have access to. So for example, we can give our AI agent the ability to research market news and sentiment. So it can use this API tool from AlphaVantage to look up the current news sentiment around a particular stock for today. So if you're kind of new to trading and finance, if people are positively discussing a company in news articles or on social media, it has good sentiment, which means people may be acting more out of greed when they think about buying that company. Therefore, driving the price up. It's kind of using online sentiment as a proxy to kind of understand mass psychology and how that might drive the price. Alternatively, if people are negatively discussing a stock online and in news articles, people are more likely to view that particular trading option as negative and out of fear. Therefore, people are more likely to sell their stock, therefore driving the price down. That's just one example. There are so many tools on here. For example, we could get access to balance sheets, which is basically like an overview of a company's financial performance. Now, I'm just using this as an example, but what I'm getting at is we can give AI the ability to get access to useful information that exists outside of its current trained data set, and then also give it the ability to take action based on that information, whether that's placing a trade in the example of trading. But like I said, you can use any API and you can connect it up to Gmail or any email provider for that matter, content creation tools, anything. But I'm just using this as an example. So let's go back to my code and show you what the end result will be. So if I click run here, I've started a new conversation and I can chat to my AI agent. So I can say, hi, what is your purpose? A bit of an existential question, but we'll ask it. So the reason why I'm asking this to the AI is to demonstrate that it doesn't have to trigger your functions every time, but it intelligently chooses when to use your functions and your tools based on the context of your message. So the assistant is saying, hi, I'm here to answer your questions, explain topics, draft or analyze text, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm going to say, great. Can you give me the sentiment today for Tesla? Hit enter. Now the AI is going to realize from my prompt that it can't answer that question from its own training data alone. So it realizes that it's got to call one of my functions, which it's done here. And it's now retrieving information from the AlphaVantage API tool. And then it's going to come back to me with a response. So it's saying today's sentiment for Tesla looks mostly neutral with a slight positive tilt. And it basically explains where that sentiment is being driven from. Great. So that's an example. So let's talk about how this code works now. So the code that I just showed you follows this process. So first we import our libraries. We then load in our API keys. We create an OpenAI client. We then define our functions. So these are the tools that AI is going to be able to use. We then, and now this is a very important step, step 5, we have to define to the AI how to use our function. We then define a function router. So you may have dozens of functions. So what this does, it defines to your code how to call those functions when the AI chooses to use any one of your tools that you provide it. I'm using the words tools and functions interchangeably here. And then finally, we run a conversational loop with the OpenAI API. Great. So now let's understand how the function calling works from a conceptual point of view, and then we're going to go into a real coding example. So this is how the function calling works. So the user sends a prompt. Your Python code then sends the user's prompt to the OpenAI API, but in addition to the user's prompt, it also sends a list of tools to the AI that it can use, so our functions. The OpenAI model then reads the prompt and the tools it has available to it. And then the AI model makes a decision. Based on the user's query, can it answer using its standard knowledge, so its training data, in which case it'll take this path and just respond as normal, and then your Python code will print that response and send it to the user. Or the AI decides that based on the user's query, that it needs additional information or that it needs to take action to complete a task. So then it follows this path here. So then the model actually sends a response back to our code. Now the user won't see this response, but our code will have visibility of it. So the model will return a function call request. So based on the tools that we made available to it, that we said these are the tools that you can have at your disposal, the AI will decide which tools it wants to use and then send back a request to use those tools. Our Python code will then read the function call request, and then our code will execute those functions. Once we've received the outputs from those functions, we return that data back to the AI model. The AI model, then using the user's original request plus the outputs from our functions, then creates its final answer, which the user then sees, and it returns that back to our code. So the important thing to understand here is the AI isn't itself triggering the code, but rather it's requesting our system to trigger the functions that it wants to use on its behalf. So we need to implement that logic. But luckily, I've done that for you in the template that I'm going to share with you at the end of the video. So you don't need to worry about that. Now with function calling, there's two categories that AI will need to call functions in. So the GPT models are trained on a huge data set of text, but they have a cutoff date from when that text was generated. So for example, the most recent model may have been trained on all the data or most of the text data available on the internet up until April 2026, as an example. But then any event that occurred after its training cutoff event, it won't have awareness of. So in our example, if a user asks for up-to-date information, like how is the news today affecting my stock positions, or what's the latest sentiment, the AI is going to realize that it needs additional data outside of its current awareness, if you like, and therefore it would trigger a function in that instance to get additional data. And then the second category of function call that an AI will use is, of course, to execute actions or to complete tasks. So you can write code to do something for you, like upload YouTube videos or write emails and send those emails. So in that instance, the AI would realize, oh, I can't do this with my normal text generating abilities, so I'm going to have to call a function, and therefore it would call a function in that case. So in today's video, I guess we're doing category 1, where the AI is requesting additional information that it doesn't have awareness of. But just know that we could build this forwards. And in today's video, we're using the example of trading with finance. We could give this AI the ability, after doing analysis, to actually go ahead and place a trade and potentially make some money for us. But I've rambled enough. Let's get into the code and how to use my template. Okay, so when you get my coding template, it's going to look something like this, except for I've added a few more details in this video. So, as discussed, we import our libraries. We import OpenAI, we import .env, which basically allows us to securely load in API keys into our code for use, import OS, import JSON as we're going to be making JSON requests, and also import requests. This basically enables us to make URL requests, basically enabling us to use the AlphaVantage API, which I'm using as an example in today's video. So after we've loaded our libraries, we have to load up our API keys. So this load.env command basically loads in our API keys from our .env file. Now, if you're unfamiliar with setting up environments, I would recommend that you watch one of my previous tutorials, which will be linked in the description. However, for this video, I'm assuming you know how to set up an environment, but I'm just going to very quickly go over it. Within the folder that your Python script is running, you want to create a file. So on Windows, you can just create a text document. Within that text document, you define your API keys. So for OpenAI, you'll have to type in something like open_AI_API equals, and then you would paste your API key here. For this tutorial, we're also using the AlphaVantage API. So you would type something like AlphaVantage_API_key. And then you'd paste your AlphaVantage API key here. And you can, of course, obtain this API key by visiting the AlphaVantage website, which, I might link in the description if you're interested in exploring it. And then to save this as an environment, you would click File, Save As. You would click All Files, and then simply save this as .env. I've already got one, so I'm not going to overwrite that. I'm just demonstrating here. Back to our code. So this line of code loads our OpenAI API key, and this line of code here loads our AlphaVantage API key from the environment, and it sets it to the variable alpha key. Now, to load the API key correctly, this has to be named exactly as the way you named it in the .env file. Okay, great. Now we're ready to write our function. Now this is the only bit where you're going to have to use your brain, but luckily AI can help you out a lot. So for writing your own functions, this is where you're going to have to apply your own logic and kind of configure things to your own needs. And if you are creating a function that uses an external API, like we are today, AlphaVantage, you're going to have to do a bit of reading up to understand how the API works. I've worked with this before, so I kind of know what to ask for AI. Again, this is just an example. I'm not showing you specifically, or this is not a tutorial specifically on how to use the AlphaVantage API, so I'm just going to go through it quickly. But if I was a complete beginner, I'm going to take this API endpoint, market news and sentiment, because it looks interesting to me, read through the documentation, and then I would just copy this code here. And this code is basically just an example in Python of how to use the AlphaVantage API key to get new sentiment data on any company. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'm just going to come to AI and ask it to code a function for me. Now again, you're going to need to read the API documentations if you are working from one, just so you know exactly how to prompt ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you work with to generate the code in the correct format. So I'm just going to say, hi, can you create a function that uses the AlphaVantage API news sentiment endpoint? I have defined my API key already as alpha key. So that's my variable. We're going to need to pass this as a parameter to the function. That's why I'm defining it here to the AI so it knows what format to use it. I am only interested in passing the ticker parameter to the function. Can you code that for me, please? Here is an example from the AlphaVantage documentation on how to use their endpoint. And I'm just going to hit enter there. And now the AI is just going to code me a function. There we go. So it's coded me a function. I'm just going to check through it. So this bit is just basically explaining to a human what it does. This is the important bit where it builds the API request for AlphaVantage, and then this sends the request and gets the response and then returns that response as JSON code. And then there's some example usage. We're not going to need that. So I'm just going to highlight this code here. I'm not going to bother highlighting import requests because it's already in the Python template. Hit copy, and I'm just going to paste that here in my functions. Great. So now I've defined a function, but the AI model isn't going to know how to use this. So we need to define how to use this function. So I'm here on the OpenAI API documentation. And when I was going through this, I found that if you want to define to the OpenAI models how to use your functions, you've got to write all this nasty and confusing JSON code, which basically defines to the AI how to interact with your tool. But the naming convention is weird, the indentations are hard to wrap your head around. But don't worry, luckily I built you a tool to make this really easy, and I'm going to tell you how to use it now. So this is my function building tool. And again, I'm going to give you access to this resource. Just watch to the end of the video to find out how to get access to this. So you're going to want to untick these boxes as it usually just gets in the way. And here we fill in these boxes to define to the AI how to use our code, and it will automatically update here. And then at the end, we'll just copy and paste this into our code and it'll all work beautifully. So let me just clear this and this. So in this function builder, in the first box, we define the function's name. So if we go to our code here, we named our function getNewsSentiment. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And now in the function description box, we have to explain what this function does and what it achieves. Now, you need to remember when you're filling this in, this is what the AI is going to see. And it has no idea how to use your tools. So you've got to explain it in simple terms. OpenAI suggests using what is known as the intern test. So would a human intern with reasonable knowledge in whatever area they work in, if they were to read these descriptions, would they understand what it does? If the answer is no, your description is too complex or vague. So you need to be clear, concise, and simple. So I'm just going to say this function, or actually I don't even need to say that because up here we've defined to the AI that this is a function. So I can just say retrieves real-time data for news sentiment for any given stock trading on the US stock market. There we go. Simple explanation of what it does. Okay, so I've defined what the function is called and what it achieves, but we still haven't told the AI how to actually use it. So if we refer back to our code, in our function we pass what is known as an argument. It's a parameter, I like to think of it like a variable, that we give to the function as an input, and it transforms that input into an output. So we need to tell the AI that you have to provide this parameter here in order for this function to work. Now, if you're new to stock trading and you don't know what a ticker is, it's basically like an abbreviation of a company's name, and it's used to identify that company on the stock market. So then stock data platforms would be able to identify and retrieve data for the correct company. So I'm going to come back to my function tool, and now we need to add a parameter. So in this example, we're only using one parameter, but for other functions, you may need to provide multiple parameters. So you just keep clicking this add parameter button for as many times as required and filling out these fields. But in this example, we're only using one. So this parameter is called ticker. We then define the parameter type. So is it a string, which in this case it is, just some written text? Is it a number, an integer, a boolean? So a boolean is a true or false statement, an array. Select whichever one is relevant. And then we describe to the AI, again in simple terms, what this parameter is and how it should be filled in. So I'm going to say ticker symbol for the user specified stock and I'm going to give some examples. So those are the ticker symbols for Apple, Tesla, IBM. And then there's this important box here. So is this parameter required? Because for some functions, not all the parameters that you pass may be necessary. For example, on the not the OpenAI API, for the AlphaVantage API, we have a lot of these optional parameters that we can define. But in this instance, we're only interested in using one parameter. And because of the way we defined our function, we absolutely do need this parameter. So we're going to check this box saying that this is required. Now, if you notice, if I uncheck this field here changes. This is basically telling the AI that in order to use this tool, you have to define what this parameter is. Otherwise, it won't work. So if you want to add another function, because you may want to add dozens of functions, you can simply click Add New Function, and then you just fill in the fields as required. And as you can see, it auto updates here. We're just going to use this one as an example. So as I filled in these parameters, it auto updated here. And all I need to do is copy this, go back to my code, and under the tool definitions placeholder, I'm just going to paste that code in there. One final thing for you to know. In this code block here, we're defining how to call the OpenAI API model. And there are some custom instructions. So this is like a hidden prompt which instructs the OpenAI model on how it should respond. So in this instance, I'm saying you're a helpful finance assistant. You can use functions to answer the user's questions clearly. Don't claim this is financial advice. But you can put anything in there. You can say, respond like you're Shakespeare or talk like a pirate, and it will respond in that manner to the user's questions. So you can define that as you want. But once you've followed all of those steps, you're ready to run the code. So if I hit run here, I can ask my AI now, can you give me sentiment analysis for, let's pick ExxonMobil, obviously because there's an oil war going on right now. So let's see what the sentiment around oil is right now. So the AI's realized that it needs to call one of my tools, and it's done so. And there we go. It's given me sentiment analysis on ExxonMobil. Somewhat bullish. So it beat its Q1 earnings, basically what they thought it was going to earn in the first quarter of the year. It beat expectations. So its earning per share was $1.16 when its estimate was 98 cents, just under $1. It's given revenue reporting. So it's basically listing out why the sentiment is positive and also reasons for caution here. Great. And there we go. We've made an AI assistant that is able to connect to external data and perform tasks on our behalf. Now, as promised, I told you how you can get access to this code template here and also this function generating tool. To get access to the resources that I used in today's video, you're going to want to head over to my school community. Now, I just set this up a couple of days ago, so it's quite quiet. I'm the only member, but you can be one of the first to join. The AI Workshop. Now, why would you join? I want this to be a space for people who are learning how to use AI APIs and also for people who are more experienced to all come together and kind of share and bounce their ideas off each other and to maybe connect with people who can solve a problem for you. This could be a great place to benefit each other. And also, I'm creating my own courses, which are currently free. This is all completely free. To use my resources, you're going to want to go to the classroom, click on the OpenAI course, and I'll add it here once I've uploaded this video, and you'll be able to download the resources like so. The function generation resource is a .html file. You'll download it and then it'll run locally in your browser, and you'll be able to download this as a Python script. And again, on these courses, if you are looking to learn how to use AI, there is so much more to come. I post videos almost daily. We're going to be covering far more than using the OpenAI API. We're going to be looking at how to use Claude Code, Gemini, Grok, also building agentic systems, which is now the next step now that we understand how to use functions. We're also going to be looking at machine learning algorithms and how you can create your own AI models from scratch. And yeah, we're going to be learning some really powerful things here. And with this knowledge shared in this course, along with the experience of all the other community members, you're going to be armed with some really useful knowledge to leverage your time, maximize your productivity, and to build really valuable apps for people and make some money. So if that sounds interesting to you, sign up to my community. I don't care if you're completely new to this or more experienced. No matter the experience, I want you here. Well, if you made it this far, thank you. It's been a long video. And if you made it this far, I know you are serious about this, so well done. And if you are serious about this, you should definitely subscribe and also join the community, because this is the place to get game-changing skills for this area. So I hope to see you in later videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.